Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Terry Hildebrandt, and I'm the Director of the Evidence-Based Coaching Program at the Fielding Graduate University, and today is January 22nd, 2019. Today we have one of our, what we call our Evidence-Based Coaching Professional Series Webinars, titled Incorporating Coaching Skills to Enhance Your Career as an HR Professional. Today we're really excited to have three of our esteemed alums of the program. We have Cindy Sachs, Senior Vice President of Professional Services at Caliper. We have Kathy Ryan. She's the Global Leadership Coach and Organizational Development Consultant, and the former VP and Chief People and Talent Leader at WePay. And Josh Rogers, who is the Enterprise Executive Coaching Practice Leader at Walmart. And we're going to kick it off by asking each of our panelists to just do a brief introduction, saying a bit about who they are and what's brought them to coaching and how coaching has so far contributed to their career as an HR professional. So why don't we kick it off with Kathy Ryan?
Sure. Thanks so much, Terry. So just so you guys know, Terry and I went through the Fielding EBC program together. That's where we met. And I was trying to think back, Terry, I think it might have been 2007.
I think it was 8, and we all graduated, okay, somewhere around there for sure.
Yeah. So we've stayed in touch and have actually worked together many, many times since then, but we went through the program together. So I have professionally been in HR, internal corporate HR. I didn't realize how long until I had to fill out a refinance application a couple of weeks ago, and it asked how long I had been in the field that I wrote down. I've actually been in corporate HR for about 34 years now, which I was shocked actually when I realized it had been that long. And I've worked for various companies, started out my career with Levi Strauss, 13 years with Sun Microsystems, head of talent management for Sony, a global talent management lead at McAfee, Intel Security. I spent some time at Google, head of the HR organization for the product search group, as well as I was an internal coach there. Last there, went to the company that Terry mentioned, WePay, which was my first real opportunity to lead HR for a startup. It was a fintech startup that was acquired about a year ago by JP Morgan Chase. Since then, I have been doing, and I'm moonlighting actually for about the last 12 years as an executive coach and organization development consultant. I also am adjunct faculty with Center for Creative Leadership, and most of my clients over the last couple of years have come through that channel. I'm actually doing, I have a new gig right now that's actually, I don't even think Terry knows. I am the Chief People Officer for a startup in San Carlos, which is here in Silicon Valley, which is where I am, by the way. It is a women's health telemed startup, very, very interesting. Actually just announced the Series B funding today. So I'm building that HR organization from the ground up, in addition to continuing with my executive coaching practice on my own. So how I got into coaching really was through HR. I mean, back when I started in HR in the 80s, there really wasn't such a thing as coaching back then. And I think as I progressed through my HR career, what I realized, especially on the business partner side, which is what I spent most of my time, global talent management and business partnering, what I realized is those trusted advisor relationships that I was having with the executives really were leading to some really interesting coaching conversations. And that's kind of when the whole coaching programs and Fielding and Hudson and CTI and all those came to be, and started offering their certification programs. What I realized is how critical it was, not just as me as a professional in HR, but being able to coach leaders on being effective leaders, so individual and executive coaching, team development, and then really I've been super focused lately on the impact of people management, capable people managers, and the impact that they can have in terms of being able to be effective coaches with the people that report to them. So it's kind of evolved, really. Actually, as I think the coaching profession has evolved, so has how I've been using it and integrating it into both my internal and my external work.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. And Kathy is probably knows so many people in Silicon Valley. I consider her my go-to person for all things Silicon Valley. So thank you so much for the introduction.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
All right. So we're going to hear from Josh Rogers. And Josh, if you wouldn't mind saying a little bit about yourself and how you have found coaching in HR.
I dropped off for just a second. Is it my turn?
Yeah, we hear you. You're good.
Sorry. What happened? Well, good evening, everybody. Josh Rogers. I lead executive coaching for Walmart. I have been in coaching for 5 years this month. So I found coaching through, I think, a channel that a lot of people end up finding it through leadership development. So I started with Walmart about 8 years ago. And we had a leader that came into the company at the time that was from PepsiCo. She came over to lead our global talent group. And at the time, I was in leadership development, sort of facilitation, program management, doing some assessment debrief and things like that. And I always found the one-on-one elements of leadership development really interesting, but I had really no idea what this whole thing was about. But I would get, if you've ever taught a leadership development class, those people always pull you off to the side and they want to tell you about the problems. And so when her name was Erica, came to Walmart, I started asking questions because she built a practice at Pepsi just about what is this coaching thing. She brought up that it was one of her areas of expertise. And then we actually needed somebody to come in and transform our strategy around how we were using coaching as a tool within the organization. And through that process, got brought into that role and sort of started on the organizational side of coaching. So building a coaching practice, doing the program management pieces of it. And then along the way became an internal coach. And so now my role entails the global the global executive coaching practice. So everything from what I call the infrastructure pieces of coaching. So the models that we're using and the maps that we're using, how we approach our strategy for who gets a coach, when, why in their career. Everything from that to doing developmental consulting with leaders on who gets a coach again, and who maybe shouldn't and we should use.
Oop, Josh, I think your internet is frozen. Hopefully he'll be back in just a moment. That's the challenge with technology sometimes. Oh, I think you're back. Your internet
Okay.
froze just for a second. So if you might rewind about 10 seconds where you left off.
Well, that was gold that I was saying. I think I left off is that I was talking about my role now, and having the global practice and managing that piece, but also work a lot with our assessment practice and on 360 developmental assessments, and then I work as well as an internal coach. So keep several clients or as many as I can, and then use coaching kind of in various capacities and sort of what you would kind of consider like micro coaching engagements as a part of development planning for high potential officers, folks like that. So officer meaning like VP and up.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So Cindy Sachs, tell us a little bit about your background and what you're up to now and how you got into coaching.
Sure, thanks, Terry, and hi, everybody. As Terry said, I'm Cindy Sachs. I am speaking to you this evening from my home outside of Phoenix, Arizona. I work for Caliper Management Company, which is located in Princeton, New Jersey, and so I am a cross-country commuter. I spend 1 or 2 weeks out of the month on the East Coast, and the rest of my time here working from home. I kind of feel like I have the best of both worlds because I get to live in a place that I really love and enjoy and do work that I enjoy with people and clients that I love that just happen to be located 2,000 miles away. I've worked for Caliper for just 20 years now, and for those of you who haven't heard of Caliper, we're an employee assessment organization that really grew up with applications of our tool as an employee selection component. And as we grew into employee development, I found myself more and more attracted to that side of our business. So for the last 15 years or so, that's really been the focus of my work, has been managing a team of coaches and consultants who are focused on employee development and helping them increase their self-awareness, understand the potential that they have, and discover how to really leverage that potential and grow it within the context of their world of work. for me, my introduction to coaching came out of working as a consultant on a leadership development program. And in particular, it was a program for high potential employees which used action learning as the methodology for growth, which is just a really wonderful way to both solve a business challenge and at the same time develop employees. And it was within the context of that program and doing some process coaching and team coaching that I discovered and first started to build my skills as an executive coach. And have found over the years that it's really the thing that brings me the most satisfaction of everything I do, whether it's managing or consulting. I love coaching the most because it really allows me to develop that very strong relationship to see immediate results. And I can think of nothing that's more of an honor than to walk beside someone on their journey. And I'm proud to say that I was able to really build those skills at Fielding's EBC program in 2015.
Great, excellent. Well, thank you so much. I feel that way too, and now do it full time as well as teach other coaches to become great coaches. So thank you for that introduction. All right, we're gonna move into our first panel question, and I'm going to ask each of you to give your perspective, and certainly you can add anything to what others are saying as we go through these questions. But why is coaching becoming so important for executive leadership development programs? And who would like to start?
I'll take a stab.
Great, thanks, Josh.
Yeah, sure. So
Oop, he froze.
Oh no.
Let's come back to Josh. Oh, now you're
There he is.
unfrozen. Yeah.
I may have to dial in. Sorry about that.
So how about that? Why don't you dial in, and we'll give either Cindy or Kathy a chance and come back to you.
Sounds good. Thanks.
You know what, I'll start us off with a few comments, and I think maybe just to build on that and use this as an example. The world is increasingly complex. And for executives, especially, who are continuously moving at a faster and faster pace, have more complex situations and challenges to solve, I think it's more and more important for us to be able to manage ourselves in those situations, to maintain clarity of thought, and have an accountability partner on the journey. And to me, those are some of the greatest benefits of executive coaching for people that are in those roles that, as I said, are more and more complex. So to me, when something happens, like your technology doesn't work, being able to remain composed and find the skills to persevere through that situation, I can think of no better way of doing so than with a coach.
Excellent, great.
Yeah.
So Kathy, why don't you say a little bit about, I know you've done a lot of leadership development and with coaching. We've worked on a lot of those projects together over. So why don't you say a little bit about it?
Sure. Yeah. And, building definitely on what Cindy mentioned, because I worked a lot with global leaders in global organizations. But, it's interesting. I don't know if you guys follow Marcus Buckingham, but I'm, on his Facebook page and his LinkedIn. And he had a quote that I took recently that I thought was really interesting in terms of, a coaching culture, but, and it had to do with feedback, which is, every time you turn around, you're hearing about feedback and feedback, especially in the context of good leadership and management. And it's becoming a little bit of a, I delivered that feedback and checked that list. And it's been kind of interesting, but he has some interesting approaches to feedback. And then there's also something that Professor Peter Hawkins said to us, Terry, when we were in Canada. By the way, I went through a coaching supervision program last year at Terry's recommendation. So that's another aspect of coaching, I think, where I have evolved my coaching as well. But Marcus Buckingham says, feedback is only ever useful if delivered in a coaching context. Don't tell me where I stand. Help me to get better. This is where this is what people are asking for. Feedback is telling. good coaching is a appreciative inquiry that leads one to richer self-discovery. I love that. And then I actually wrote down what Professor Hawkins said to us when we were talking about coaching. And he said, a coaching culture exists when a coaching approach is a key aspect of how leaders and managers engage and develop all their people in ways that create increased organizational performance, which I think is the key there, and shared value for all stakeholders. So for me, it is an absolutely critical, not just as a leader, effective leader and manager, because it's critical to have that skill. And I've always built coaching into the leadership, integrated it into the broader leadership development programs, so starting with talent and succession planning and the outcomes that come from that, which sometimes leads to the audience for the executive or leadership development program. But I've built one-on-one coaching into all those programs, because to me that actually is the most important part. And talking about action learning too, Cindy, I think that's where it all kind of comes together. So in terms of leadership development, it is an absolutely critical component of, and most important internally for me, is integrating it with the other programs that you offer.
Absolutely. So Josh, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
All right, you're
I'm
back.
in, so I'm
Excellent.
back.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
I'm
So
back.
we're going to give you a chance. How do you see coaching critical for leadership development, and how has that become an integral part of what HR does?
Yeah, I think Cindy was tackling it when I was following off, but so I may repeat what she said a little bit. But I think it's a lot about that. A one size fits all sort of approach to leadership development doesn't really work anymore. With the complexity that leaders are dealing with, we have to tailor to them. I think one of the other pieces, if you look at it from more of like a human or a personal side of things, one of the things I'm particularly seeing is that, like, as society changes even, and as leaders progress throughout the organization, like an increased level of, like, I don't have anybody to talk to. Like, I have everybody to talk to, but I have no one to talk to. So I think that that's a place where coaching is increasingly creating space for leaders that may have, in some cases, been filled with better interpersonal relationships that have existed in the past.
Excellent. Thank you. So I have another question. How can one best manage internal and external coaches? I know many of you have had experiences with this, but what do you think are some best practices here?
So I've done both, Terry, as you know, because you're always on my coaching cadre.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I've been a part of an internal cadre myself personally, but most of my experience comes with integrating executive coaching into a broader executive development program or initiative. And I've had the best luck being an external executive coach, where I'm on the outside coaching executives, personally as an executive coach, but I've had great experience internally as an HR practitioner, bringing in executive coaching. So I usually handpick my own executive coaching cadre. And I know there's challenges, particularly with HR people, because we also, in many cases, have a fiduciary role. So it's really hard to balance those two, to be a trusted advisor, maintain the confidentiality that we need, the ICF code of conduct, and also have a fiduciary role. So I've had really the best luck when I've been internally in an HR role, bringing in external coaches, I'll be honest.
Okay, thanks for that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, what's been your perspective here? Since you've run the whole program for Walmart, I'd love to hear how that works for you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously managing the internal side of coaches, we have a small group of internal coaches that are what we call job plus coaches. So they have other roles, typically within HR in some capacity, and then we've got a cadre of external coaches that we use as well. I think one of the best practices is to actually have the cadre model of external coach management. when I say the cadre model, meaning you've got a select group of coaches that you're using frequently, so that they get a chance to learn your business. And because our goal from a Walmart standpoint is that we're working with coaches that learn us and that know our business. So one of the things that we do when we bring new coaches into the cadre is we do orientation for coaches. So making sure that the coaches understand kind of two different sides of things. So one, that they understand our business and how we operate, our culture, who we are, what we stand for, what kind of things get rewarded within the organization. And then the other side of it is understanding what we want them to do from a coaching standpoint. And it's not, some organizations are a little bit more specific in terms of like what models you're going to use from a coaching standpoint, and others, like us, bring good coaches into the organization, and we coach to a map. So for example, 95% of our executive coaching engagements are going to have an interview-based 360 on the front end of them. They're going to have a defined number of stakeholders. We're going to define the way that management and HR is involved within an organization. What are the touch points in between the coach, the client, and those two other parties are. So the best you can lay it out like that for both coaches and for the internal sides of things, the more effective your coaches are going to be able to be within the organization in a really short period of time.
Okay, excellent. Cindy, any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I too have managed both internal and external coaches, and our business model is perhaps a little bit different because I'm managing primarily full-time Caliper employees who are coaching with a variety of Caliper clients. We do have some contract coaches that we bring in to expand our capabilities when needed. So, given that blend of all the variables, and some of the things that we found most helpful is to make sure that we're all following a consistent process and approach to coaching so that we can ensure the quality of the deliverables, that the same professional standards are going to be attained. It makes it easier for our coaches to prepare to deliver the greatest value possible to our clients, whether they're full-time or part-time employees. In addition, one of the things that hasn't been mentioned yet is we also have bi-monthly meetings where we bring as many of our coaches together as possible so that we can share successes and challenges and best practices, kind of brainstorm options with each other, share tools and resources that have been most effective, and we actually store those tools and resources in a shared repository so that we can continue to learn from each other and continue to improve our craft as we work together.
Great, excellent, thank you. So what do you look for when sourcing external coaches for your organization? I'm sure a lot of our students and guests would love to know how they can prepare themselves to be effective in an organization like you have managed. So we'd love to hear from you. What do you look for?
Yeah, I'd be happy to get us started on that. It's a complex question because I think there are so many variable components. I mean, for me personally, the very first thing is the passion for coaching. I mean, the credentials are important to us, the experience and expertise, having a coaching philosophy that is consistent with ours, but you can check all those boxes. And to me, if you don't have the real passion for coaching, it's just not going to be a really great fit for us. Those coaches that we find are most successful are doing it because they love the work. We look for people with some experience, and particularly with experience in a business context, because all of our work is virtually done within that business context. So even though when our clients come to us, they bring all of who they are and all of what they do to that experience, the paying client for us is the organization, is the business. And so we have an accountability to them, just as we do for the coaching client, him or herself. So that understanding of being able to connect to business goals and objectives is really important for us. And I would also say that in conversations leading up to a formal interview or in the interview, we look for the individual to be able to model those coaching competencies that we would look for them to be bringing to their client relationships as well. You know, the ability to deeply listen, to build context, to build relationship, to manage the conversation to a certain extent.
Great, excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Josh.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I would, certainly plus one, everything you said, Cindy. For me, I tend to handpick, and I'm biased, and most of the coaches that I bring inside are fielding EBC grads. And a lot of them are folks that I've met through the process, through fielding, because the program is so exemplary. I have found the coaches to be terrific. Obviously, there are coaches that come out of, great coaches that come out of other schools, but mostly because I'm in the corporate world, for profit in Silicon Valley, there is a certain kind of coach too. I think one that has worked for profit, someone who's actually been in the corporate world as well. It's okay to use you, Terry. I mean, your life before what you do now, you have an engineering background, and for some of the executive engineering leaders that I've worked with, they prefer to have somebody who's come up through that way as well. So it really depends. I have a bias towards ICS certification. I just think it's a nice credential to have for sure. But somebody who has a solid coaching school background, preferably from fielding, and then we'll provide a couple of different options for the coachee to select from. And typically they go with both fit and or somebody who's actually been in, sort of walked in their shoes in the past as well.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. So Josh.
Sure. Yeah, I would say I would echo a few of the things, and I'll throw out our minimum qualifications to be able to coach in our cadre, and then I'll add a little bit to that. But our min quals are 5 years coaching, 50 or more 6-month engagements, sound coaching methodology, what we call a good cultural fit for Walmart. So like arrogant coaching doesn't play really well. Some organizations it does, but it doesn't really play very well with us. And then there's this whole intangible piece that Cindy, I think you were referencing, and Kathy, I think you did too, of do you connect well with other people? Can you build trust really quickly? And you can pick up on that really, really quickly within an interview. Of whether or not a coach is going to come across as like a real quirky, or if they're going to be able to connect with a senior executive well. I'll say when I say those min quals, our typical coach that's working within Walmart has been in the field for 10 plus years, has coached more than 200 leaders. So you'll see people that are coaching at your top of the sort of Fortune food chain as being in the field just a little bit longer. I can't iterate the point enough of like that. Think of if you're interviewing with a coaching practice leader and thinking about them as almost like a coaching client, and being able to build trust really quickly and rapport really quickly with that person, because that's the gatekeeper to coaching within any given organization.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the tips. So I'm curious how your own coach training has contributed to your career. You all invested in coach training at Fielding. So how has that helped you in what you're doing now?
Wow. That's a big question. It is transformational. I mean, not just in terms of coaching skills and in all checking all the boxes for ICS certification at the PCC level, et cetera, but I just think in terms of my own self-awareness and just knowing who I am. So I would say that was the first thing. I also went to an NLP coaching program before I went to Fielding, which it was fabulous. I learned a lot about myself through that program, but it didn't translate as well to me in the corporate world that I work in. But fielding was, and having been a graduate of their MAOD program, I just thought it was transformational, and the relationship and the network that was built as a result of that was fantastic. And then I would just add that the coaching supervision program that I went through this last year at Terry's recommendation was also like, wow, that was incredible. I mean, I really do feel like now my coaching is even at another level in a different way than it was before.
Yeah. And just FYI, for those who don't know, we will be bringing in coaching supervision certification into fielding shortly. We're working on doing that with Damian Goldvarg, who was the person that Kathy's referring to, and I'm a graduate from his program as well. So definitely am a big fan of coaching supervision, and you'll hear more about that in the future. But thank you. And I found it interesting. You went through the master's at fielding first, and then came back later for the coaching credential. What was that experience like for you?
You know, if I could, I would still be at fielding. I'd be in fielding all the time. I loved the program. I loved the people that I met. It was just such an amazing experience. It really was. And I'm so thrilled that we're going to have continuing education again. Because I always went, as Terry knows, to every one of those, and I just looked forward to them so much. Yeah. But I would say, just real quickly on answering your question, Terry, as I was thinking about it, is I think that actually going through the coaching program actually made me better at my other job too, which is like kind of chief people officer. I just feel like my skills in general, even if it wasn't in a specific executive coaching or coaching capacity, but that my skills in general, I built a lot better skills in a whole bunch of different sort of leadership areas too.
Great, thanks. Yeah. How about Cindy?
I could echo everything Kathy just said. Truly, for me, I danced around fielding for a number of years, probably close to 10 years, and finally couldn't figure out why I hadn't already enrolled in the program, and did. And it is definitely the pinnacle of my professional development. Truly a transformational experience. And it did a couple of things for me. First of all, it gave me a theoretical foundation upon which to build and strengthen my coaching practice. It definitely made me a better leader as well as a better coach. I think one of the unquantifiable and unexpected outcomes for me was also that I became a more confident coach. And I think confidence is really important. And I appreciate Josh delineating between confidence and arrogance in a coach, but I think we need to believe in what we do and to bring that strength with us if our clients are going to find us to be really believable and trustworthy. And lastly, there was something about sitting in the chair as a client during those fishbowl experiences that made the coaching experience very, very real. There's no escaping it. And for me personally, the vulnerability of being in that position exponentially increased my understanding of what it's like for my clients to come to us and sit down and talk with us during a conversation and to be real. And I think my heart just opened up for my clients much more, bringing that experience with me into my sessions even today, and knowing the strength that it takes for them to be vulnerable.
Great, thank you. Josh?
Yeah, I'll ditto on the more confidence in my coaching. That's probably been the biggest benefit. But I'll say the other piece of it is my role is we have X number of coaching engagements going on at any given time, and one of them is going to go sideways, or something's going to come up, and coaches actually need thought partners along the way. So it helps me coach the coaches that are working with us, and I'll say that from like a broad theoretical spectrum. it helps you relate to a lot of different coaches and a lot of different approaches, because it may not be the way that you go about coaching, or the models that you go about coaching or your kind of go-tos. But it helps if you understand what different coaches that are coaching within your network are doing. But yeah, I'd say the biggest thing for me has been just more confidence in the coaching. And even for me, like, I think about the levels at which I was the most confident in my coaching before fielding. So more typically like pre-VP, so director, senior director is where most of my coaching was happening. It's happening more at the VP, SVP type of a level now. And so it's there's like been a pretty clear delineation of before and after in the clients that I feel the most confident with.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. So what advice do you all have for other HR professionals who want to get trained as a coach?
I would say don't wait 10 years like I did. I wish that I had done it sooner, and I think the best advice I could pass along is whatever might be holding you back, go for it. Certainly checking out the credentials of the program, the offerings, and finding the one that's the best fit for you in terms of the offering, not just in terms of the content, but also in terms of the culture and the philosophy of the program. I mean, I think you've heard it from Kathy and Josh and me as well, and from Terry too. That fielding was a great fit, and a lot of what made it a great fit was the content and the structure of the program, but for me it was really the people that made it come alive, and the cultural fit, the philosophy of the organization itself, and the network that I've built and carried with me afterwards. So my first advice is, if you feel yourself, there's that little voice inside your head saying, maybe I should do that someday, I say listen to it.
Thank you.
I have referred a lot of people to the program over the last 12 years. Many who've gone through. I think it doesn't matter what track. You might want to stay on the HR track and have a long career internally as an HR professional. And I would say going through the coaching program will make you even better at your internal HR role, in terms of have coaching conversations. And even if you aren't doing coaching engagements in the sense of you would if you were external or an internal coach, I just think that the competence and the confidence you get going through the program and being able to be a trusted advisor to an executive and really be able to sit down and get mind share from the leader is super important. But if you are going to go the executive coaching track, I mean, I think it's fantastic. I mean, if you enjoy that part of the role, which is to be that trusted advisor and to be able to have, business-led, impactful conversations with an executive and be able to influence an executive and a team, if you're doing team coaching, there's no better way, I think, than to get that level of credibility and confidence that comes with it.
Great, thanks.
I'd say figure out what you want from your coaching certification, kind of that end. If you want to be a big C or a little C coach, because those routes may be different for you. In a lot of larger organizations, there's an internal process to becoming a true internal coach within that organization, and getting a certification externally to what your organization supports may not be the right route for you to go in that. So if big C coaching is what you want to do, you need to have those conversations internally first. But I'll echo from like the little C coaching piece. So the coaching conversations that you're having every day, whether that's with your team that you're leading or the executives that you support or the leaders that you support, it's going to make you better at it. And in a lot of cases, it's going to take away some of the need from the organization to have to spend on an external coach, because you're having more frequent coaching conversations with a leader. So there doesn't need to be a coaching intervention that happens at some point, because it keeps the leader on the rails, so to say, for a longer period of time because you're there.
Great, excellent. So I'm going to open it up for a moment to our listeners and participants live today. So if you have a question for any of our panelists or all of our panelists, go ahead and turn your microphone on, and if you want, you can also turn your video on and just introduce yourself with your name and then ask your question.
Hi, I've got just one question. I'm Chris Ryan, hailing in from North Carolina, and I wondered what you are seeing in the trend for team coaching, if that's increasing, stable, just in general, what are your observations?
Increase. I think you're seeing an increase across the field because you have organizations that are primarily looking to scale coaching at any way that they can because it's a high cost intervention. If you look at like the Conference Board releases a global coaching study like every 2 years, there's been a pretty steady increase over the last 10 or so. And I think that data is about to come back in, and it'll come in as an increase. And so it's a constant topic. I'll say that you also have team coaching is also where executive coaching was probably 15 years ago in terms of like defined models and the way that team coaching is going to work within an organization. Because if you talk to 5 different team coaches, you're going to get 5 different models. So I think it's in an interesting place. So it's in a place where it's sort of self-defining of what it's actually going to be moving forward.
Thank you.
We are also seeing an increase as well in requests and inquiries about team coaching. I think it's probably for a couple of reasons. One is because nothing happens in isolation of others today. We can only succeed together, and I think it gives learners an opportunity to really learn from each other, as well as to build those collaborative skills. So yeah, we don't see a change in that trend for a while.
I definitely think it's increasing, and I think once people know the difference between sort of team coaching and team building, what team coaching really is, I actually think it is really evolving the organization development practice area as well. And I certainly, especially even internally, get a lot of requests once people know what team coaching is, and when I facilitate what that is, a lot of people are requesting it. But I find that there are a lot of the clients are a little bit unclear initially on the difference between team coaching and team building.
So, Kathy, could you give us like a 30-second definition from your perspective from the field?
Sure. So I think team building to me is more of a one-time event. Maybe it requires some skills like in team dynamics or team assessment, using more of a structured approach. A lot of times, it's integrated with a new leader or team integration, or one area around Tuckman's model of team formation. Whereas I think team coaching is much more of a process over time, is what I find, and it does also require skills in team dynamics and facilitations, but it's more about using kind of the coaching skills around dialogue and helping members of the team through their issues, creating a picture of, what does high performance look like? There could be some strategy work mixed in there. So I think it's a time-bound thing where I find team building is much more of an event. Team coaching is more of a process, more similar to a coaching engagement.
So I've always been curious, and we don't want to go too deep in this, but what do you see the difference between team coaching and OD? Like an ongoing OD?
They are. So I said I actually think it is part of organization development. I really do.
Okay.
I think it's an evolving aspect of organization development.
Great. And by the way, we're going to have, we had a speaker, Dr. Laura Hauser, who was one of our thought leaders, do a research presentation on team coaching. And we also have an upcoming presentation, if anyone's interested, on group coaching based on Eric Oswowski's dissertation and group coaching with executives. So stay tuned, and if you're curious about any of those, we'll be having more dialogue about this hot topic in coaching for sure. Any other thoughts about team coaching before we move on to our next question?
I hope I wasn't too far off of what Laura said.
Yeah, it's certainly an evolving space, but I think she would agree with what you said. Okay, any other questions from the audience?
Hi, this is Marion Boyle. I'm interested in securing a position as an internal coach with an organization, but I find that these positions, as well as any coaching positions, don't tend to be posted. And I was wondering, the requirements that a couple of them mentioned for their internal coaches were pretty significant. I was wondering if they had any advice about how I might approach this.
It's a great question. And if no one has an answer, I have an opinion on that.
I don't do this much, but I would say, like, I would answer this a lot of different. I would answer a lot of questions in this space the same way, which is use your network. You know people that from fielding, people in the field. I'm assuming I'm making the assumption you come from a leadership development, but use your network. And I'm sure Josh, who does a lot of hiring of people, and maybe you too, Cindy, with your consulting business, but yeah, use the network.
Yeah. One thing that
I agree.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would also say, so I think the folks that are on this panel have coaching is a formal part of my role, as it is. I think for all of us it is, but we're also doing other things. I'd also say get a realistic job preview of what you're getting, because some of the folks that I talk with that are true, like, dedicated internal coaches are coaching like 60, 70 leaders at a time. For me, that would, and maybe it is for some people, for me, that wouldn't be sustainable from just like an amount of energy for me to be a good coach. I couldn't be a good coach to 60, 70 clients over the course of like 2 weeks. I would get too burned out to do it. And that happens pretty frequently. So I would have those conversations if you know people that are like true, just dedicated resources to coaching, because that does tend to happen.
So just a couple of thoughts. I was an internal coach before I was an external coach. I've had my own company in addition to being at Fielding for over 10 years as an external coach, but I was an internal coach at HP for 11 years before that. And what I found is that there aren't very many full-time coaching jobs, and that's why you're not seeing them posted on Indeed or any of those job sites. Most of them are integrated in with other roles, like we're seeing here with HR or OD, or I was actually in quality. I was a quality engineer and a quality consultant and moved into coaching. And my whole coaching career was in quality. But I did a lot of coaching, probably more team coaching in those early days than I did individual, but I did both. So I think it's also important to not limit yourself to job titles that might say coach in them, but be open to start in a different function like HR or quality or process improvement, or there's probably many fields within a corporation, even leadership roles, and that'll be what we'll talk about next month. Is we'll have alumni from our program talking about how they use coaching as managers and leaders. So coaching is used in so many different roles within a corporation. So you might consider getting started that way.
Well, there's also the challenge of the organizations, and you mentioned this, wanting people who have work experience in their field. So that adds to the complicated nature of it.
Yep, I would agree.
Sometimes that's a substitute for understanding too, and being able to sell your understanding. So, for example, Walmart's a retail organization, right? I've never worked in retail, other than working in the talent management side of, or talent development side of retail. A lot of times these organizations are looking for somebody that understands, and that it can draw context from operations or retail or technology or whatever it is. So I think the more that you can present yourself in a way that you understand their context, the more traction you're going to get.
Yeah, I would also
Yeah,
say,
and I would,
go ahead, Cindy.
no, I was just going to say maybe finding a way to express how you would bridge other experiences and skills that you've had with the context of the organization that you're interested in joining. Would be a way for them not only to understand your skill, but also to be able to think, for you to be able to express to them your problem-solving abilities, to make those connections.
Right. Yeah, one thing that Fielding does with our evidence-based approach is give you exposure to a lot of different human development theories, human change theories. And the reason we do that is that coaches are fundamentally experts in human behavior and getting folks to change. That's really what our expertise it draws from. And you know, I coach in all kinds of industries, including financial services, a lot in healthcare, and I've never worked in healthcare as an employee. But nonetheless, I get a lot of clients in that space. And it's because I'm really good at solving tough people problems. And that's what they're interested in, is solving tough people problems and getting coaching on those aspects of leadership, which go beyond, you know, they already know how to do surgery and, you know, diagnose health issues. They don't necessarily know how to diagnose their people and organizational issues. So I can bring that to the table as a coach. So I don't know others thoughts about that, you know, working across industries, but I think it's you know, something that coaches can do fairly easily. So one last question: what parting advice do you have for our listeners today? And I know coaches aren't supposed to give advice, but we're we're going to look for that today from you.
What advice would you give yourself, Terry? That's
It's a good coaching
Well
question.
done.
the old switcheroo. That's the technical term for that one. Practice. Coach wherever you can. If you're not coaching in a formal capacity, the more that you're building your experience, especially if you're wanting to work with organizations, you start nonprofit is a great place to start. That they're usually willing to take the help, and then small organizations build up into larger organizations. Some people get these like lightning strikes of like, boom, I had a Fortune 50 company that I started working with 2 months after I finished my certification. But I think the general storyline that you hear is more of a stair step up levels and up sizes of organizations. So I'd say practice and then take every chance you can get to coach within the organization.
Yeah, and I'm reflecting back when we went through the program 11, 12 years ago, Terry, I did a lot of pro bono coaching too. I mean, I really wanted to. My kids were still in the school system back then. I think they were in junior high and elementary, or maybe a little older. If I did pro bono coaching, particularly with the school districts, administrators, and principals, I did some team coaching. Oh, they were so appreciative. And I went into it, one, to be better at my day job, but also just to give back. And so I would say, use those opportunities if you're still learning and you're still getting your ICF credentials and things like that to do pro bono coaching, because it helps you, gives you the practice, the confidence. I think that's really helpful, but also can make such an impact as well. And have fun through the process. Great. And learn. I mean, I in terms of self-discovery, my gosh, it's transformational. For me, it was very transformational just from a personal growth perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would just add on those things to say, immerse yourself in the industry as much as you possibly can with networking groups, certainly building your credentials. Personally, I think continuing to work with a coach myself has been a great way for me to just get better at what I'm doing and who I am and how I'm showing up, and to recognize the value of coaching. And that really regenerates my commitment to it as a career as well.
Great. Well, I really want to thank all of you for joining this evening. I think we've gotten some great conversations, some great advice, and again, thank you for being alums of the Fielding program and all the great work you're doing out in the world. So thanks again, and we look forward to staying in touch. I do want to just briefly remind everyone that we have a coaching community of practice. And if you've not yet joined the coaching community of practice, it's easy to find it. You basically go to coach.fielding.edu, click on our blog post, which is the EBC blog, and then you will be able to find out more about what we're doing. This program is one of the many programs from our coaching community of practice. We also do thought leaders webinars and have our ambassadors program and writing opportunities, and then also networking opportunities. Lastly, as Kathy mentioned, we are going to be doing a continuing ed program coming up on May 10th and 11th. So we want to invite everyone on the call, whether you're fielding or not. It's open to anyone in the universe who's interested in coaching. So come on down to Santa Barbara. It starts on May 10th in the afternoon, and then all day we'll have workshops one after another on May 11th in Santa Barbara, followed by our EBC graduation. So you can enjoy sending our new grads out into the world and maybe give them some advice as alums. And then we'll have dinner and dancing also from 7 to 9 p.m. at the lovely Hyatt Centric Hotel, which used to be the old Casa del Mar Hotel right on the beach. So it's a beautiful location. So we hope you'll attend. And you can find information about that on fielding.edu and click on alumni at the top and look for the May 10th and 11th event. And registration for that will be opening on February 1st. You will receive continuing coach education hours for that, so that can count toward your ICF re-credentialing for those who are looking to gather hours. But more than anything else, it'll be a great opportunity to connect with our alumni and our current students. So we hope to see you there. So thank you all, and everyone, till next time, we'll see you on our next webinar.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.